Welcome back everyone to episode 11 of our tutorial series on Distant Worlds Universe. In this episode we're going to cover two things, resort stations, and also we're going to finally finish off so we can get rid of this annoying pop-up, a passenger ship. The game doesn't know it when it keeps telling us that we need to build that, but we don't have any location to send our colonists anyway. I mean the home planet population. There's nowhere for them to go, so we really didn't need a passenger liner up until now. But I've advanced forward a little bit of time, and during this time all I've done is upgrade all of our scouts from the Mark 1 to the Mark 2, so they're all hyperdrive capable now. And I've also in that time got our construction ship, the Majestic Interlude, to upgrade to the Mark 2 as well, so she now has hyperdrive capabilities. This is a nice time to remind us why it's really important to get your other construction ships back as soon as possible. You can see that this construction ship was actually last in the queue, which was a mistake on my part considering the way the series was going to go. Normally, you would send your exploration ships off immediately as soon as they're upgraded to start exploring. But just for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm doing things out of order because I want to do resorts and passenger liners next. Well, before we go on to the exploration of the system. And also, we'll be talking more about expanding to your initial system in the next episode as well. So basically, we can see that this construction ship is still pretty far out, and that's after my construction ship, which was standing by next to our home planet, has already finished its upgrade. And it's going to take a long time. Maybe it took 2 months or so for me to get the funds and to get this construction ship even queued for retrofit, and it just finished. Maybe it only took a week to actually do the retrofit. You can see that this ship is still going to take probably another 3 months or so to reach home planet, and it's completely wasted time. In order to compensate for this, we will just build another construction ship as well. I won't need it in this video, but in the next one, when we start doing our expansion, we're going to want it so that I have 2 construction ships zipping around until this one gets back, and we'll probably make use of all 3. But the point being that we have to start building more mining stations in our initial system. For example, this wonderful fueling station, well, future fueling station. It has Castellon and hydrogen, both your major fuel sources, and it has both of them at over 90%. So this is very rare. It's a real gem of a gas mining station, or it will be when we construct it. But on to resorts and passenger liners. If you want to know which planets you can put a resort on, and my advice to you is actually to build a resort on every possibility, because they do end up making you quite a lot of money. So I would click over here on the side panel, click the potential resort locations, and these are the places where you can place a resort. We can start with this first one. It has a really nice scenery bonus. That's just going to increase your income, so that's a good thing. But anytime you encounter a planet with a rune, those are usually good places for resorts as well. They don't have any scenery bonuses unless this rune itself specifically says. So this one gives a development bonus for the colony, but sometimes instead of that, it'll have a scenery bonus for any resort. That's not the case with either of our runes, unfortunately. They both provide development bonuses for colonies on planets which we'll probably never colonize, but that's fine. Looking back at this ocean planet, this is ideal because, one, it's on the inner system, it's not so far away from us, so the construction ship will get there very quickly. 2, eventually we're going to colonize this planet, so we'll be able to protect eventually with a big space station, whatever resort we build on here, without ever needing to upgrade it to have shields or anything else. So that's a really useful thing, that will eventually colonize the planet and protect the resort very closely. So just if you want, you can just go down the line and build a resort on all 4 of these, because as I mentioned, they're going to produce a lot of money for you. And on top of that, we're going to make a resort which is extremely inexpensive and quick to build. So let's go down to the actual design. We're just going to start this one from new. I'm going to make sure that we retrofit these manually, and its role is going to be a resort base. In typical fashion, I will use all weapons, although this design won't have weapons, and I'm not sure ever if we'll put weapons on our resorts. Usually for those, I'll only use defensive items like armor and shields. But just in case we ever do, I'll put those all weapons, which is probably what you should choose for every station, unless it has... No, actually, I think that is the case. Unless it has... Unless it has tractor beams, there's some caveat, but let me just ignore that for now and we can cover it later. So we want a commerce center because this does interact with money. Command center, of course. Life and Hab, we probably only need one because this is going to be very bare bones. We need one reactor, of course. Where'd it go? I'm staring right at it. And we're going to have 2 fuel cells, and I think we'll put 2 cargo bays in as well. You need 1 or 2. I think only 1, but I saw 2 on my own PDF printout, which now, by the way, is available on Reddit somewhere. It's probably buried at this point, but in the Distant Worlds subreddit. So I put 2 cargo bays, and I don't remember why, because I looked up my own designs, and they're usually 1. But just because it doesn't really cost that much, it's not going to impact very much at all. I'll leave this at 2 standard cargo bays. I think this is mainly used to help you store parts if you want to upgrade, retrofit to another design. But I'll come back with more about this when I realize why I did this. Not in this episode. And now the big question is, how many passenger compartments do we need to put on here? Because, okay, the recreation center is an obvious one. We need one of those to make it a resort location. And we'll need 2 docking bays and storage. I put, I think, only 1 on the PDF, but I think 2 is better. Because sometimes you'll have a ship trying to refuel at the same time that you have a ship coming in with passengers. Sometimes you'll just have 2 ships coming in with passengers. So I think 2 is not a bad idea. It's just the amount of cost that it adds to increase your docking bays by 1 is so minimal, it's worth it. Now the last thing is, again, passenger compartments. If you add only 1, you're probably okay, because an important thing to know is the passenger liners will only bring passengers, well, tourists, to your resort locations in 20,000 person increments, so in 20K things. That means if we see even 1 passenger compartment is enough for 60 trips by your passenger liner. And that's going to take a darn long time. I'm not even sure exactly how the prioritization works, like when passengers choose to go to the resorts, but I can tell you that even getting up to 1,200, so 1.2 million, is going to take you probably a decade. So it's going to take a long time, but just to decrease the amount of tedious micromanagement that we have to do, that we'd have to pay attention to the resort from time to time and see when it's getting close to capacity. Just to avoid that a little bit of tedium, we're just going to add 2 standard passenger compartments directly, immediately. So it'll take a really long time for this to get to capacity. So it'll be a lot easier for us to kind of fire and forget and not have to worry about it for a long time. The last thing is the name. I'm going to tip my hat in the direction of Larry Monte, who has created a lot of wonderful Distant Worlds content. Unfortunately, he doesn't appear to be active anymore on YouTube, but he's created a lot of good series. A lot of people, like myself included, have learned a lot from what he taught us. So I'm going to call this Disneyland or Disney Resort, whatever you want to call it. You can name it your own way, but he used to name his resorts like Disneyland or whatever it was. So I'll follow in that just as a sign of respect for one of the great Distant World YouTubers. And that is going to complete our design. So you can see the maintenance cost for this is only $332, one of the lowest maintenance items we've built, and yet this is going to be one of the items which makes us the most amount of money. Basically, you drop off passengers, they stay there, and they just throw their money at you. It's very simple, and with this kind of maintenance cost, there's not even a lot of overhead on building these, which is why we're going to build them pretty much everywhere, because anytime a passenger goes anywhere, it's going to make us money. And I'm sure that it won't take very long for us to be making a lot more than the maintenance cost that we're losing. So we save, we exit. It's still going to complain about passenger ship, but we'll get to that in just one more second. Let's go to our construction ships. We have that third one we just started building, but it's paused, so it hasn't started. And let's get the Majestic Interlude, which is the one next to our planet. There she is. Scroll her down over here. In other words, we're just looking at the list of potential resort locations and picking one, but I know this is the one we want to build at. Control right click, build Disney Resort for only 925 credits. So it's a real bargain. The way I made these are extremely cheap. I want to make another brief mention about another thing you can do with the resort locations. If you want, you can make the resort locations not just a vacation place, but a work slave vacation area. I don't know how to put this, but if you choose to attach For example, on this planet we have polymer and dilithium crystals, which are two strategic resources both for mining. If I wanted to, I could add 3 mining extraction things to my resort, and then I'd also want to increase the cargo. Let me just kind of show this off. If I was to edit this Disney resort, which I don't want to do, but if I was to add 3 mining engines and then maybe increase the standard cargo bay up to 5 or 8 or something like that, this would actually be a dual purpose resort location and mining station in one. The reason why that's beneficial to do is you're kind of merging 2 stations which would otherwise have duplicate things, like the maintenance on our command centers and our commerce centers, all these things. We don't need 2 of them for 2 different stations if we just make the mining station also part of the resort. So basically your maintenance cost goes down. It's one less item you have to worry about, so you've just made 2 stations into one, so that helps with defense. You don't have to worry about defending 2 different stations, so you can make one station better defended. Anyways, there's a lot of reasons why you might consider merging the 2, but I've told you how to do it if you'd like to do it. But it's very min-max, and it's probably not the best idea for a beginner. For beginners, for people who are a little unfamiliar with the game and not ready to do that kind of higher level of min-max, the best thing for you to do is actually just build 2 separate stations. Build a resort, and then maybe have the other one build a mining station separate of that. This is a great example for us because we actually don't want to build a mining station or mining engines in our resort at all, because this is going to be the first planet we colonize. And if you remember, in High Tech and Industrial, colonization happens to be our next technology we want to research after we get crew systems underway. So that means that soon enough we will have a colony which is extracting these resources at the optimum already. Okay, now let's get into designing the passenger ship. We'll go to... actually, we'll create this one from scratch as well. I'm going to leave auto retrofit on for this one because the civilian economy does retrofit its ships automatically. Go to passenger ship, evade, correct everything. The name for this, I'll just get it over with right away, is going to be the passenger liner. No great amount of creativity there, just how I prefer to name these. We want a command center. Let's just give it 5 ion thrusters for now, and we'll probably increase that. We'll give it 4 directional thrusters for now, and probably, that might actually be the right amount. We'll probably need 3 life and hab, just because we're going to need hyperdrive and 3 reactors. This is all from memory, so I'm not sure exactly, but we can tweak it in a second. Then again, you have this question of how many passenger compartments should you build? Well, I think this is related to when you're going to colonize. Since we're going to colonize rather quickly, I'm just going to put 2 on immediately. If you don't have plans to colonize, I've had plenty of games where there was no colonizable planets within my colonization limit. And I knew in that case I was going to be stuck for a long time until I got colonization rights on like lava planets or whatever before I would expand. In those cases, I would only use 1 passenger compartment. Because remember, unless you're moving from one colony to another, if you're moving to a resort, you're only going to be using 20,000 people, and 1 passenger compartment is already more than enough. 50 times more than you need. Okay, literally it's 60 times more than you need, but I was doing a little bit of rounding there. So if you do have colonization in the near future, you might want to do 2, because the same ships you use for transporting to your resorts will also transfer from one colony to another. And if you know about exponential rate of growth, the more people you have, the more your planet's going to grow, except for there is a max population. So once you have 2 planets, and one is almost at max or at max, and the other one's almost completely empty, the most optimal way for you to grow is actually to continuously put as many people as you can, like probably take 1/4 of the population off the higher one and put it into the lower one. Just anytime you got above 3/4, just keep, the min-max optimum is to do it at the max population limit. What I'm trying to say here is basically you want to move people off your home planet as fast as possible to the new colony. And they're going to be limited by the number of passenger compartments. What I found is when you get a planet to max, you can't decrease the people by moving people off in any way close to the amount of population growth that's going to happen. So that planet is basically going to stay at max population forever, which means you want to move as many people as fast as possible to the other planet to increase and accelerate its growth. So 2 passenger compartments, maybe not even as many as you'll eventually want. You could eventually bring this up to 4 or 5 when you have many more colonies to allow people to transfer a little faster. Sometimes in some gameplays you might actually not want that many passenger compartments. Maybe you don't want people moving to a different planet. This can be especially important if you have different people types, different species. That's the word I was looking for. So maybe I don't want my Actars mixing with the Slookins or whatever. I don't want them to share planets. But they might, based on tax and happiness, unless I limit the amount of people that can actually transfer in a passenger liner. Now that's all food for thought. You can forget about all that if you don't really want to think about the more complicated aspects of this game. It's kind of fun to think about, but last thing we need for this is to determine a range. Well, we already know based on this system that we already have 2 colonization targets in this current system and 4 resort locations. This is way more than enough to keep our passenger liners busy for quite a while. So we don't actually need any more range than enough to go intra-system. We only need it in this system. However, if you have identified a colony or a potential resort location outside of your initial system, you should try to get this standard fuel limit enough to get them there and back. I'm going to keep this just at 5, but probably a good, maybe safer number is 8 or 9 or 10. I'm keeping it this low just because in this specific example, we don't have any place to go but in our initial system. And I should say that passenger liners in general don't move as far as your mining ships or your freighters. They are going to stay a little more local because they're only going to be transferring people from places that hold people, which are either resorts or colonies. And that usually ends up being a much smaller circle, a much smaller radius around your home planet than all the places you want mining stations. So that being said, this is a good design. We probably want to add maybe 1 more ion thruster. I'm just trying to squeeze in 1 more before we get up to the next level of Happen Life. You can see if I add 1 more ion thruster. Oh, we actually got that one in too. Did I miss something? Oh, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I can probably decrease the Happen Life and just decrease this. Now, I need to find the min-max plateau, but it looks like Happen Life has to stay where it was. What have I done wrong? Okay, 5. It's probably because I didn't include as many fuel cells as normal, so I have more extra space to play with ion thrusters. You know, we might as well kind of find some better min-max. Okay, we dropped there to 13, so let's do 20 and 14. This gives us a really good turn rate. Well, let's see, maybe we even add 1 more? Sure, 15. Well, that's a pretty minor difference. We'll just keep it at 14. So 20 cruise speed, which we won't use very often, will mostly be going hyperdrive. 14 degrees turn is very good. It's good enough for a bigger ship. And I don't think there's anything else we need to do because it has enough range for our purposes. Again, you might need more range than this. This is only enough to go a quarter of a sector there and back. But I'm going to save this one because it's appropriate for our needs here. And that's it. We don't have an annoying pop-up anymore. And that's going to call this video to a close. So next turn, we're actually going to start building more mining stations around our initial system. And on top of that, we're going to begin exploring the other systems with our new hyperdrive capable scouts. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.